Like most people these days, I had a fucked up childhood. I mean, who doesn't, right? Dad took off before I was born, and Mom was left to take care of me on her own, which was a skill she sorely lacked. My mom slipped right back into the drug-addled party lifestyle she'd enjoyed before I was born, and had soon turned our two-bedroom apartment into an opium den. For the first 5 years of my life, I walked around in a confused, terrifying mist. The viscous air would flood down the hallway from our living room and right under my bedroom door. It always seemed to linger for days. I know now that my mother wasn't a bad person, just a victim of her own addictions. I mean, that was my excuse for her that I would always have at the ready. Though, when she did have spare money, she would always put food in the house or buy me clothes from Goodwill. The only pieces of furniture I had in my bedroom was a mattress set and a little blue and white toy chest. Not that I had a lot of toys to put in it, of course. Just the 3 I'd gotten for birthdays. One was an art kit, another was a red wagon, and the last, my pride and joy, was a doll named Betsy. Betsy was my best friend. We would always have imaginary tea parties together, we would always sleep together, and even take baths together. Sometimes, I even remember her voice. When I thought back on my conversation with the doll in adulthood, I realized that I was likely suffering from delusions, thanks to the always present plumes of smoke that laid claim to the dingy hallways and drafty bedrooms of her small apartment. Still, I remember the sound of her voice, a pleasant tingling lilt that was almost always coupled by a raucous giggle. I also remember the things that she said to me and the things that she wanted me to do. She asked me to steal, usually food or pens and pencils. She wanted me to bring her forks and knives and hit the bad man who slept on her couch. It was always something that I would undeniably get in trouble for, but, being a doll and all, she would never take the heat. When I told my mother who had put me up to these games, she would scoff and shake her head. She never believed me. Adults never would. Around my 6th birthday, I asked my mother for a birthday party. I wanted to invite the cool boys from school and serve them cake and ice cream to make them like me. I remember standing in the kitchen that day with such hopes, having just asked the most important question of my entire life. The glass bottle of Coca-Cola I held was shaking in my nervous hands. I waited with bated breath as my mother continued putting groceries away, almost as if she hadn't heard me, but I knew she had. Finally, just as I had failed the second time to muster the courage to repeat my question, she turned around and gave me a flippant shake of her hand. My face fell as she shook her head, mumbled something else under her breath, and stumbled off into the living room. I heard the music go up then as more people walked in the door. Some left, some stayed. I never knew them either way. It simply wasn't fair. My mother threw parties all the time. What about me? I was a kid. All my friends had birthday parties, and now the kids at school would know I was too poor to have one, and they would tease me even more. I slammed the door behind me. Betsy was lying on the bed and smiling. She was always smiling. Usually made me feel better, but today it just made me angry. She just kept staring at me, smiling. She's going to tell me to do something bad again. This is why Mother wouldn't throw me a birthday party. It was because of all the trouble I would get into because of that damn doll. This was her fault. Betsy didn't have to go to school, and Betsy never got in trouble like I did. And in my young mind, I truly believed it was the doll, not my mother, who was to blame for everything. I snapped then. Since the kids were home from school, I went out into our shed in the backyard to return my mother's call. The shed was usually the children's domain. I sat on my old toy chest, which was currently being used as a tea party table, and dialed the number she had left me. 3 rings. 3 whole rings. My mind had gone blank with no emotion. I set the phone down next to me and stood up. I could hear the muffled sound of my mother's anguished cries and feel the dark clutch of possibility in my own chest. I pushed against a door in my mind that had been locked so tightly for so long that I had forgotten it was even there. Was it even possible? Could the trauma and the opium have really led me to believe that a small child was actually a doll? Begging for food and utensils to eat with, asking me to protect her from the bad man. No. I slowly turned around and brought my gaze to the makeshift tea party table. Surely it was too small. You couldn't fit a person in there. You couldn't. But then, what about a very small, starving, emaciated child? What about her? Would she fit? Would an investigator even bother looking for a person in this chest? I knew I wouldn't. It was just too small. And I was sure we had opened the toy box at some point over the years, hadn't we? Or had something swimming in the dark recesses my memories always stopped me. I couldn't even remember seeing it open. I knelt down to the ground and opened the clasp. It would be better not to look. After all that I had overcome, this new life that I had earned for myself, it could all be undone by opening this toy box. I shouldn't open it. I should throw it in a landfill and forget it ever existed. I should not look inside. I opened the chest. I never had a doll. My mother never could afford to buy me one. I never had a wagon either, for that matter. But I did have a toy box. A pretty blue and white toy box. And when I was 5, I beat my little sister to death. And I put her in it.